They didn't abandon you. They got evacuated, like fire alarms going off in a building about to collapse. Because when a soul is chosen, the universe doesn't just protect, it purges. Did they not try to break you with a smile? Did they not sit at your table, eat from your plate, then spit on your name when you weren't looking? Did they not twist your loyalty into weakness, your vulnerability into ammunition, your silence into shame? They mocked your kindness, weaponized your softness, celebrated your pain like it was entertainment. They didn't just leave, they performed their exit like a scene they had rehearsed. And when it was over, they blamed you for the wreckage they caused. And now they act like you were the problem? No. They weren't called to walk with you. They were dragged into your life to test what was sacred. And once the test was over, the universe snatched them like loose threads in a garment that was about to be tailored. Not because you weren't enough, but because you were becoming too much for their comfort. Before we dive deeper, like this video, subscribe, and drop 77 in the comments if you've ever been discarded like trash by someone who had no idea they were handling treasure. When you interact with this message, you're helping it reach another chosen one who's sitting in the dark right now, thinking they were abandoned, when really, the universe was just sweeping the room for snakes. Let's get this truth into the algorithm. Let's awaken who's next in line for breakthrough. Because this isn't just a video, this is a spiritual alert. And if you're still breathing, still standing, still shining after what they did, then this message is your confirmation. Let's make this loud and clear. They didn't abandon you. They got removed, cut off, extracted. Because when the universe assigns protection to a soul, anyone playing against you is playing against the force that made you. And the universe doesn't lose. You were crying over betrayal, while the universe was shielding your destiny from backdoor sabotage. You called it rejection, but the truth is, it was divine insulation. They were never supposed to last. You kept inviting people into rooms they were sent to contaminate. And still, you begged them to stay. Still, you questioned your worth when their energy walked out. Why? Why do you mourn people the universe dragged out screaming because their access to you was becoming a threat to your ascension? Why do you grieve those whose departure made space for your clarity? They weren't your loss. They were your liberation. Let's stop pretending you don't know what I'm talking about. Let's stop acting like they just moved on. No, they ran. They collapsed. They couldn't survive the environment your growth created. Because your light? It didn't just illuminate, it exposed. They saw the elevation coming before you did, and it terrified them. Because when someone is built on lies, your authenticity feels like a personal attack. So they bailed. Or better yet, the universe flushed them out. But you're still sitting there asking if maybe you were too emotional, if maybe you should have said less, if maybe it's your fault they turned cold. No, the only thing you did was underestimate the gravity of being chosen. Do you not realize what that means? It means your path is protected, even when your heart is naive. It means your silence speaks louder than their gossip. It means that while you were trying to make peace, the universe was rearranging your orbit. Because some energies can't survive your atmosphere. You didn't lose them. You were leveled out of their reach. And still, you doubt your power. Still, you think you're alone. Still, you walk like the universe isn't riding shotgun in your shadow. Still, you ask, why me? When you should be saying, of course me. Of course it's you. Because the ones who are chosen don't come out of peace. They come out of pressure. They come out of betrayal. They come out of silence. They come out of fire. And your enemies saw that fire long before you embraced it. That's why they turned. That's why they lied. That's why they ran. Because they didn't abandon you. They got exposed. So stop rewriting history to feel less pain. Stop glamorizing what the universe forcefully removed from your timeline. Stop chasing closure from people who never had the capacity to stand next to your calling. And, for the love of your own legacy, stop doubting your glow just because it made insecure people scatter like roaches under light. This wasn't their rejection. This was your initiation. You didn't get left. You got lifted. Now, let's go deeper and name every lie they told, every scar they left, and every piece of your power you forgot you had. It's time to remember. So if this truth is already cracking something open in your chest, if you felt that eerie silence after they vanished, if you've questioned your own worth because of their absence, then don't just watch, activate. Drop the number 77 in the comments if you finally understand that they didn't leave by choice. They were evicted by alignment. And when you comment, like, and subscribe, you don't just feed the algorithm. You help deliver this message to another chosen one who's still mourning a divine removal. Let's flood the silence with truth. And now, let's go in, raw and real. Because this isn't just a message, it's a reckoning. If you are truly a chosen one, you'll feel it. You won't just hear these words, they'll land in your spirit like thunder. So sit up, breathe deep, and stay locked in. Let's begin. Number 1, they treated you like a doormat, then blamed you for the dirt. They treated your love like a doormat, stomped on it with dirty intentions, then pointed at the stains and said you were the mess. But the truth is, the only thing you did wrong was shine in a space that was built to stay dark. Let's not sugarcoat it. They used you. They drained you. They didn't just misunderstand you. They manipulated you. They didn't just walk away. They walked all over you and then acted like you were the one who couldn't handle pressure. They got comfortable disrespecting you because you kept forgiving. They got bold with betrayal because you kept showing up. And the whole time, they told others you were too emotional, too intense, too unstable, while they were the ones sowing chaos into your peace behind your back. Did they not weaponize your kindness? Did they not make you feel like you were hard to love when they were simply unqualified to love at all? Did they not celebrate your silence until you finally spoke up? And when you did, they used your reaction to justify their entire fake story. They poked you, pushed you, cornered you, and when you finally flinched, they ran around saying, "See, I told you they were crazy." But let's make something clear. You weren't crazy. You were reacting to calculated harm. You weren't unstable. You were unraveling under emotional warfare that they pretended was just miscommunication. And through all of it, every whisper, every fake smile, every backhanded compliment, the universe watched. Quiet, but not absent. Silent, but not still. See, the universe doesn't move fast just to satisfy your pain. It moves with precision. You cried asking, why is nothing happening to them? You begged for justice. You wanted them to pay. But the universe wasn't ignoring you. It was building a case so detailed, so customized, that no lie they spoke could outrun the consequence that was on its way. And now, that consequence is at their door. And while you were out here mourning their absence, their mask was rotting from the inside out. that same peace they stole from you. Now it's slipping through their own fingers. That fake smile they wore while sabotaging your reputation. It's twitching now, because energy doesn't lie, and the universe always reclaims what was stolen from its chosen. And let's talk about that. Because somehow, even through all of this, you still doubted yourself. You thought maybe you were the one who pushed them away. Maybe you were too much. Maybe your light was blinding. And guess what? It was. But it wasn't too much. It was too pure. It wasn't too loud. It was too true. And they weren't ready for that. They were addicted to control, and your authenticity exposed their poverty of character. You were never the weak one. You were the test, and they failed. Just like Judas did. Just like every coward does when they're put next to something real. That's what happens when power meets pretense. It crumbles. You want examples? Look at history. Look at the path of the truly chosen. Oprah was fired and ridiculed until the very people who mocked her had to beg for a seat at her table. Nelson Mandela was imprisoned for decades, only to walk out stronger, more focused, and eventually lead the very nation that tried to break him. Malala was shot and became a global voice for education. The chosen ones are always targeted, always misunderstood, always betrayed. Why? Because they threaten the lie. And you, yes, you are one of them. So let me ask you something. Why are you still grieving people who wouldn't flinch if you disappeared tomorrow? Why are you still crying over conversations that never honored your voice? Why are you still trying to explain your pain to the very ones who caused it? You owe no one closure. You owe no one access. You owe no one an apology for surviving what was meant to destroy you. They walked all over your boundaries, then called you controlling. They dumped their trauma on you, then called you too emotional. They used your compassion as a crutch and your silence as a weapon. And when they were done, they blamed you for the blood on their hands. But guess what? The universe saw every cut they made and every time you cleaned it up alone. And now it's payback season, but not the kind you have to deliver. The kind that returns to sender with interest. You didn't deserve that disrespect. You didn't deserve to be made into the villain while they played victim in front of an audience that didn't know the truth. But now, the truth is surfacing. Their name is losing its grip. Their image is cracking. And everything they tried to build on your back, it's collapsing without your energy holding it up. And let's talk about that energy, because you've forgotten who you are. You are not average. You are not random. You are divinely calculated. You are protected, backed by alignment, surrounded by a force they could never see. And that's why they underestimated you. They thought you were alone. But the whole time, the universe was right behind you, collecting receipts and preparing revelation. So stop acting like you were deserted. Stop looking at your reflection with doubt. Stop asking the universe for signs. You are the sign. Your survival is the proof. Your comeback is the confirmation. Your glow-up is the karmic invoice their lies couldn't cancel. They treated you like a doormat, but didn't realize you were the foundation. And now that you're gone, they've got nothing to stand on. Let them sit in the silence they created. Let them choke on the truth they buried. Let them face the fallout of losing access to something sacred, because they didn't just lose you. They lost their only chance at real elevation. You were the opportunity, and they fumbled it. And you're rising, you're glowing. You're becoming the version of yourself they swore would never exist. And every step forward you take, It's a reminder that they didn't win. They were never strong enough to break you. They only revealed how powerful you always were. So walk tall, walk loud, and never apologize for how hard you hit the ground, because look at you now. You didn't just rise. You made the fall regret ever touching you. Let's keep going. Number 2, you were the puppet in a play you didn't audition for. They didn't love you. They scripted you, played God in your life while you begged for authenticity. You thought it was real. It was a performance, and you were cast as the fool in a story they never deserved to write. You were the puppet in a play you didn't audition for. They handed you a script that wasn't yours, directed your emotions, and pulled your reactions like strings on a marionette. Smile when they want you to. Be quiet when they need control. Forgive them before they even apologize, because that's your role, right? That's what you were cast to be in their performance. Predictable, compliant, emotionally flexible, spiritually bendable. And when you broke character, when you dared to have boundaries, dared to speak truth, dared to question their intentions, they called you difficult. They didn't want a partner. They wanted a prop. They dressed up their control as love, coated their insecurity in compliments, called you deep while secretly resenting the fact that your soul couldn't be faked. And you kept trying to earn the applause in a room that was only clapping for your self-destruction. Every time you cried, they called it weakness. Every time you asked for clarity, they said you were too intense. And every time you tried to walk away, they pulled you back in with just enough kindness to make you second-guess your instincts. They fed you validation like breadcrumbs, just enough to keep you lost in their forest of manipulation. And you followed, because you're real, because your heart is loud, because your love is layered and honest and pure. But they were never after love. They were after control. They weren't afraid to lose you. They were afraid of losing power over you. And the moment you stopped dancing to their chaos, they rewrote the story and painted you as unstable. Told everyone you were the one who switched up, that you were too much, too emotional, too intense. But let's really call it what it was. You weren't too much. You were too awake, too alert, too aligned. Your soul started sensing the fake in their energy, and your light started glitching their illusion. That's what they couldn't handle. Not your anger, not your sadness, not your silence, your truth. And I need to ask, how long are you going to sit in the front row of a performance you were never meant to be part of? How long will you replay conversations that were scripted to keep you confused? How long will you shrink yourself into the version they created for you? You didn't come here to play a role. You came to reclaim your name, your voice, your frequency. And stop asking if you imagined it. Stop wondering, maybe they didn't mean it like that. Yes, they did. They knew exactly what they were doing. Emotional manipulation isn't accidental, it's strategic. They studied your triggers, they clocked your patterns. They knew which version of themselves to put on just long enough to keep you hooked. And when that version wore thin, they blamed you for reacting to the switch. You thought you were building something real. They were building a stage. And when you started slipping out of character, when you stopped being their puppet, that's when they panicked. Because your awakening disrupted their production. Because your refusal to perform was the loudest truth they couldn't control. And that's when the knives came out. Not literal, but energetic, verbal, psychological, the smear campaigns, the half-truths, the concerned messages to mutuals, the passive-aggressive social media posts. All of it? A desperate attempt to keep control over the story. Because once a chosen one starts telling the truth, the lie loses power. And let me speak to that inner voice in you still wondering, why didn't the universe stop it? It did. It's stopping it now. You're here, aren't you? You're waking up. You're seeing clearly. You're remembering who the hell you are. That's not coincidence. That's intervention. The universe didn't leave you in the play. It waited for you to remember you were never an actor. You were the architect. You just forgot. Because the performance was so loud and the love was so fake, it drowned out your truth. But now the mask has slipped. Now the silence is loud. Now they're scrambling for a new script because you won't play your old role. That's what being chosen does. It doesn't just shift your path. It shatters everything that was never real. And the fallout? That's not your mess. That's the debris of a collapsing illusion. You didn't lose them. You lost the performance. You lost the false peace, the fake intimacy, the scripted apologies. And in return, you gained your voice, your power, your presence. And yet, you still doubt. You still ask, was it really manipulation? Yes, it was. And the fact that you're even asking proves how deep they rewired your self-perception. But here's your truth. The universe never left your side. It just waited for you to stop moving like a puppet and start walking like a force. Because that's what you are. A force. Not a character. Not a prop. Not a sidekick in someone else's story. You are the main event in a life they couldn't script. And now that you've cut the strings, they're choking on the silence. Let them, and let's keep going. Number 3, they made you the joke in rooms you didn't enter. They turned your pain into punchlines and called it bonding. Your breakdown became their entertainment, and they laughed, not because it was funny, but because your healing terrified them more than your hurt. Let's not pretend it didn't happen. They made you the joke, the laughing stock. They took your wounds, the ones you tried to hide, the ones you bled through silently, and put them on display like theater. They mimicked your pain in conversations you were never invited to. They exaggerated your lowest moments, like gossip was some form of justice. You were never there to defend yourself. That was the point. Because cowards only mock what they're too weak to face. They turned you into a meme in real life. The chosen one, the healer, the giver, the light, became comedy in the mouths of people who never had the courage to live with authenticity. You trusted them with your silence, and they turned it into noise. You gave them your vulnerability, and they passed it around like party favors. You gave them access to your sacred, and they used it to entertain their boredom. And while they laughed, you wept, alone, confused, doubting yourself, asking why the people you would have taken bullets for were the first ones to aim, asking why every room you weren't in suddenly had your name in it, wondering what you did to become the punchline in someone else's insecurity saga. Let me answer that for you. You didn't do anything wrong. You just existed in truth. And truth unsettles liars. Let me speak to that part of you still asking, but maybe I did something to deserve it. No. What you did was trust people who never knew what to do with honesty. What you did was carry light in rooms built on shadows. What you did was show up real in a world addicted to performance. And when people like that meet someone like you, they react. And that reaction looks a lot like betrayal. But here's what they didn't expect: that the joke would flip, that the story would reverse, that the person they laughed at would be the same one the universe exalts. Because karma isn't a myth, it's a force. And it never forgets the echo of your name bouncing off the walls of rooms where your presence was replaced with lies. They made you the topic, the tea, the one they loved to hate, until their own lives started collapsing. Now, they're quieter, because when energy comes full circle, it doesn't come with warning, it just knocks. And it's knocking now, on their friendships, on their peace, on their reputation, on their mental stability, because energy doesn't lie, and neither does consequence. And let's talk about why they really laughed, because it wasn't just about you, it was about what you represented: freedom, depth, transformation. You were becoming something they never had the discipline to pursue. And that made your growth a threat, because people who are stuck will always mock movement. People who are fake will always mock feeling. People who are empty will always fill the silence with someone else's name. And that name, it was yours. You were their distraction, their scapegoat, the one they used to avoid looking in the mirror. Because as long as they were talking about you, they didn't have to deal with their own mediocrity. You gave them purpose, but it was counterfeit. And when you pulled your energy back, when you stopped explaining yourself, when you went silent, they had nothing left but their reflection. And that's what truly haunts them. Because now you're not the joke, you're the reminder. Every time they see you winning, they feel the echo of the lie they told. Every time your name pops up, their guilt flares like an alarm. Every time someone mentions you, they flinch, because what was once funny now feels like prophecy. You didn't fold, you flourished, and that's the punchline. But let me turn the mirror on you now, because the real tragedy isn't that they made you the joke. It's that you started to believe them. You let their version of you shape your self-worth. You questioned your glow because a room full of shadows couldn't hold it. You shrunk yourself because the echo of their laughter made you think maybe, just maybe, you were the problem. You weren't. The only mistake you made was doubting a power that the universe placed in you before they ever knew your name. You were chosen before they ever slandered you. You were protected while they were mocking you. And you were rising. Even while they were dancing on what they thought were your ashes. They thought your silence was submission, but really, it was strategy. They thought the joke would break you, but really, it built you. They thought you'd never recover. But really, you were just reloading. And now, your name is shifting in the atmosphere. No longer spoken in laughter, but in reverence, in curiosity, in regret. Because you didn't just survive their mockery, you turned it into momentum. And that's what's destroying them now. Not your words, not your revenge, but your existence. So don't ever again let their cowardly comedy shape your identity. Don't ever again sit in shame for being the realest person in a room full of frauds. Don't you dare apologize for being too deep, too intense, too sensitive. Because all of that, it's your power. That's the frequency that got you chosen in the first place. Let them watch. Let them wonder. Let them squirm in the silence they once filled with your name. Because you were never the punchline. You were the shift, the signal, the awakening, the vibration they couldn't handle and couldn't unsee. You weren't sent to fit in. You were sent to disrupt the illusion. And now, every lie they told about you is collapsing under the weight of truth you never even had to speak. Let's keep going. Number 4, they gaslit you into apologizing for feeling. They set the fire, handed you the match, then blamed you for the smoke. And you stood there, choking on guilt, apologizing for trying to breathe. They gaslit you until you doubted your own emotions, twisted your reality until you apologized for reacting to the pain they caused. You cried, and they rolled their eyes. You spoke your truth, and they called you dramatic. You asked for clarity, and they accused you of starting drama. And worst of all, you started to believe them. You bled emotionally, spiritually, sometimes even physically, for people who wouldn't even bring a bandage, who looked at your wounds and asked why you weren't smiling, who said you were too sensitive when they were just too heartless. They made you think feeling deeply was a flaw, that your empathy was excessive, that your emotions were the problem instead of the alarm system for their dysfunction. And you stayed. You made excuses. You over-explained. You told yourself, maybe I am being unfair. You bent over backwards to make peace with people who were swinging knives behind their back. You tried to heal a connection while they were setting it on fire. But let me tell you something, the universe has been screaming the whole time. You weren't wrong for feeling. You weren't broken for caring. You were under attack by people who couldn't handle your truth. Because that's what gaslighters do. They don't want resolution. They want control. They don't want to fix the issue. They want to make you the issue. They flip the story until you're the villain and they're the misunderstood victim. They feed you just enough fake peace to keep you from walking away, while stripping away your confidence one manipulated conversation at a time. Let me ask you something. Why were you apologizing for having a heart that feels? Why were you the one losing sleep, pacing the room, questioning your sanity, when they were the ones creating the chaos? The answer's simple. You forgot your power. You forgot that being chosen means feeling everything deeper, not because you're weak, but because you're wired to sense energy, to see through lies, to decode what's unspoken, and they couldn't handle that. So, they called it crazy. They labeled you unstable, because if you ever trusted your intuition fully, their mask would fall, and they knew it. So let me remind you, you were never overreacting. You were responding to the emotional warfare they waged in silence. You weren't unstable. You were being spiritually ambushed. And now that you've pulled back, now that you're healing, now that the fog is clearing, they're scared. Because they never thought you'd wake up. And the universe, it never abandoned you. It was right there, waiting for you to stop apologizing for being awake in a world that rewards numbness, waiting for you to realize that your emotions are sacred, your fire is protection, and your truth is untouchable. So stop saying sorry for feeling. Start saying thank you for remembering who you are. Let's keep going. Number 5. You shrunk so they could feel tall. You handed them the spotlight, thinking they'd shine with you, but they used it to cast a shadow over you. And when you stepped back to keep the peace, they stood taller on your silence like it was a stage. You shrunk so they could feel tall. You toned down your brilliance, held back your gifts, swallowed your truth, just to keep the peace in rooms that were already breaking you. You watered yourself down hoping they'd drink. But the more you poured out, the thirstier they became. Because no matter how much you gave, it was never enough for people built on lack. They couldn't stand your presence, so they manipulated you into dimming it. And you, because your heart is pure, because your soul is wired for peace, you believed that maybe, just maybe, if you softened enough, they'd stop feeling threatened. If you made yourself small enough, they'd stop competing. If you stayed quiet long enough, they'd finally hear you. They didn't. Because they never wanted peace. They wanted dominance. And here's the part that stings. They watched you shrink with a smirk, watched you question your power, watched you doubt your voice. They fed off it. Because every time you stepped back, it gave them space to inflate the illusion of superiority. They didn't just feel taller, They needed you low to feel anything at all. You weren't too much. You were just surrounded by people who had never seen light that didn't need applause to shine. And still, you blamed yourself. Still, you wondered if being less would bring more love. Still, you silenced yourself like your voice was the problem, not their insecurity. And the universe? It watched, not because it didn't care, but because it needed you to see the truth. No amount of shrinking will ever make insecure people feel whole. You gave them a seat at the table, and they flipped the entire thing over. Took your generosity for weakness, took your humility for passivity, took your grace as permission, and when they couldn't replace your presence, they tried to erase your impact. But let me be clear, the universe didn't choose you to play small. You were chosen to be loud with your truth, bold with your energy, immovable in your value. You weren't sent here to dim, you were sent here to disrupt. And the people who couldn't handle that, they were never supposed to stay. Their exit was a blessing, not a betrayal. Their distance is protection, not punishment. So stop apologizing for the gravity of your presence. Stop shrinking in rooms where your soul is meant to lead. Stop mistaking silence for safety, because silence doesn't protect the chosen, it imprisons them. You weren't too much, they were too empty, and your time of shrinking is over. Let's keep going, as this is not the end. This is where we turn the tables. The enemy gets exposed, humiliated, and spiritually dismantled by karma, by energy, by the silence of the universe. Number 6. They touched what was protected, and now they're feeling the burn. They thought they got away with it, thought silence meant safety, thought no lightning would strike because the sky was quiet. But the universe wasn't ignoring them, it was aiming. They touched what was protected. They tampered with energy that didn't belong to them, played games with a soul backed by divine order. They laughed in your face while lying behind your back, not realizing the very ground they stood on was cracking beneath them. See, when you are chosen, when your spirit is aligned, when your purpose is sacred, the universe doesn't need to shout. It just waits, patiently, quietly, strategically. And now, that wait is over. Now the burn is setting in. They betrayed you thinking there would be no backlash. They slandered your name and toasted to your tears. They mistook the universe's silence for permission, but the silence wasn't approval. It was set up. Because the universe doesn't react with emotion, it responds with precision. While they were mocking you, the energy they threw was circling back, multiplying. They didn't just play themselves, they summoned their own storm. Remember how they moved? Bold, loud, reckless, dragging your character through mud while keeping their hands clean. They thought no one would see, but the thing about being chosen is, you don't need to defend yourself. Your energy is wired to reveal the truth. The universe is the witness. The karma is the jury. And the sentence, already in motion. Now their peace is glitching. Their mind is loud in the quiet they use to weaponize. That same silence they use to punish you. It's choking them now. They feel it when they try to sleep. That pit in their stomach, that anxious energy, that feeling like something's off. That's not paranoia. That's alignment correcting itself. You didn't have to clap back. You didn't have to stoop to their level. You didn't have to tell your side, because the universe already knew it. And now the people who laughed when you cried are losing the very peace they faked in your face. Let's talk about what really scares them. It's not your words, it's your glow. It's the fact that after everything they did, you're still rising, you're still elevating, still evolving. That's what's haunting them. They touched what was protected, and now they're watching their own life unravel. Not because you cursed them, but because the energy corrected itself. They underestimated you because they couldn't see the force behind you. But the universe saw everything. It saw the gaslighting, the manipulation, the smear campaigns, the fake apologies, the half-hearted support, and it's a more cool, Now they can't explain what's going wrong in their life. They can't post their way out of the collapse. They can't sleep off the energy they've summoned, because this isn't drama. This is divine backlash, and it's not done yet. So don't you dare question why they're quiet now, why they've gone ghost, why they're trying to make peace after years of creating war. They feel it. They're afraid, because they touched something sacred, and now they're feeling the burn. Let them. And let's keep going. Number 7. They made war with a soul on assignment. They didn't just come for you, they came for your purpose. And when someone makes war with a soul on assignment, the universe doesn't argue, it retaliates. They thought they were just hurting a person, talking trash about some ex-friend, crazy partner, or difficult co-worker. They had no idea they were throwing shade at a soul who was carrying something divine. They weren't just insulting you, they were interfering with an assignment, yours, one written in the blueprint of the universe long before they ever knew your name. And now, they're paying the price for picking a fight with destiny. Let's make it clear, you weren't sent here to play it safe. You were sent to shake things, to shift atmospheres, to disrupt generational curses. You're not just somebody. You are a walking, breathing catalyst. That glow they tried to dim. It's not personality, it's purpose. That intuition they mocked. Not sensitivity, it's spiritual radar. And when they touched you, disrespected you, tried to dismantle you, they didn't know they were triggering the full force of universal protection. Because the universe may be patient, but it's not passive. It watches how people handle what it plans to use. And when someone tries to sabotage that, consequences are no longer optional. They're automatic. That's why everything they try to build is cracking. That's why nothing they start ever finishes right. That's why their peace feels fake and their wins feel heavy, because they're living under energy that's now off balance. They can post fake happiness, they can smile through the chaos, but deep down, they feel it. The weight, the shift, the pressure, and they should. Because when you go to war with someone who's aligned, you don't win, you delay your own elevation. You were a test, and they failed. You were an invitation, and they mocked it. You were a divine connection, and they poisoned it. And now they want to know why their life feels cursed, why their relationships are fragile, why their dreams are lifeless. It's because they tampered with something holy and thought they were just being petty. But this wasn't petty. This was prophetic. Let's be real. You tried to save them. You tried to bring them with you. You tried to love them through their darkness. You thought loyalty could heal dysfunction. And the whole time they were plotting, not knowing that every step they took against you was logged in energy. The universe took notes. The silence was strategic. The timing was divine. And now the very doors that would have opened for them through connection with you, locked permanently. Because when you make war with a soul on assignment, you don't just lose the person, you lose access to the blessing they carried. So don't mourn the loss. Don't ask, why did this happen? It happened because the light you carry revealed the darkness they weren't ready to face. And instead of healing, they attacked. Instead of rising with you, they tried to drag you down. And now the same energy they threw is circling their life like a storm without mercy. Let it. And let's keep going. Number 8. They played you like a game, but forgot the universe never loses. They thought they were clever, playing you like a pawn in a game they thought they controlled. But the thing about playing games with someone protected by the universe, the house always wins, and this time, you were the house. They played you, coldly, strategically, like it was a sport. They made your loyalty the playing field, your heart the scoreboard, and your pain the halftime show. You opened up, and they calculated it. You struggled, and they entertained themselves. They watched you cry and whispered, "See, I knew it." They baited you with kindness, only to collect your reactions like trophies. You thought it was real. They thought it was content. You were going through hell, and they were making group chats about it. You were drowning, and they were sharing screenshots. You were fighting for your soul, and they were using your name to build clout in rooms you never even stepped foot in. But here's what they didn't account for. The universe doesn't miss, it doesn't forget, it doesn't sleep on its chosen. While they were laughing at your breakdown, alignment was already on the move. Because the pain they turned into a punchline. That was never just pain. It was fuel. It was sharpening your purpose while dulling their path. And now, that energy they weaponized against you, it's hunting them down in silence. They're confused, lost, exhausted. They're wondering why their wins feel heavy, why their peace is short-lived, why the air feels thick around them, even when life looks good on the outside. Let me clear it up. That's not bad luck. That's not coincidence. That's energetic justice. Because you can't play with a chosen one's heart and expect to walk away clean. You can't mock someone who was sent to rise and expect not to sink. You can't feast on someone's struggle and then complain when famine shows up in your own life. That's not karma, that's balance. And you stayed silent. You didn't expose them. You didn't go low. You didn't match their immaturity. You took every lie, every manipulation, every betrayal, and you brought it to your evolution. And now, you're the one shining. You're the one glowing in silence. You're the one they still stalk in shadows, hoping your success was temporary. But the joke is on them, because what they thought was a game turned out to be a test. And they failed, miserably. So stop asking why they did it. Stop wondering if they ever cared. They didn't, not like you hoped, but that's not your burden. That's their consequence. And now they get to live with the taste of their own energy. Bitter, dry, heavy. The same mouths that laughed at you, now locked in silence. Not because they ran out of jokes, but because you're no longer playing. And the universe? It's still undefeated. Let's keep going. Number 9. Stop asking why they left. Start asking why you let them stay. They didn't just leave. They lingered, drained you, dismantled you. And when they finally walked out, they acted like you were the problem. But the truth is, they should have been gone long before they got the chance to break you. So stop asking why they left. That's not the question anymore. The real question is, why did you let them stay that long? Why did you keep the door open for people who only walked in to rearrange your peace? Why did you hand out keys to your soul like they were gifts for the ungrateful? Why did you tolerate the weight of their disrespect while convincing yourself it was love? You knew something was off. Don't lie. Your spirit screamed every time you ignored the red flags. The passive aggression, the backhanded compliments, the emotional neglect, the subtle jabs disguised as jokes. Your intuition warned you, and you hushed it. You told yourself, maybe they're just going through something. No, they were going through you, and tearing through your boundaries like they owned them. You made space for people who didn't respect the floor they walked on. You let them into the sacred without checking their energy at the door. And when they polluted it, you cleaned it up for them. That's not strength. That's not compassion. That's self-abandonment disguised as love. And I get it. You thought love meant endurance. Thought loyalty meant tolerating mistreatment. You thought if you gave more, they'd finally see your worth. But they never saw your worth, because they were never looking. They saw what they could use, what they could manipulate, what they could extract. And you were too busy trying to be enough to realize you were already too much for people who weren't even ready for your light. Let me tell you something that might sting. They never should have made it that far into your life. Not everyone deserves front row access to your journey. Not everyone is qualified to hold sacred space in your heart. But you opened every room. And when they trashed it, you handed them the broom and apologized for the mess. That wasn't loyalty. That was survival. That was you trying to hold on to something that had already expired. And the universe watched it all, not in judgment, in mercy, waiting, watching, knowing that eventually you'd wake up and realize that keeping them around was costing you more than their exit ever would. So stop asking why they left. They were never meant to stay. Start asking why you kept rewriting invitations for people who kept crossing out their own names. The truth is, you're not waiting for closure. You're waiting for the courage to admit they didn't deserve you in the first place. But now, you know better. So move like it. Let's keep going. Number 10. Stop calling it abandonment. Call it extraction. They didn't walk away. They got pulled, yanked, ripped out of your life like a splinter too deep to stay. And you weren't being abandoned. You were being rescued in silence. Stop calling it abandonment. Stop acting like you were left behind. You weren't left. You were lifted. You were separated. You were spared. And yeah, it hurt. Not because you lost something valuable, but because you were detoxing from something that was poisoning your purpose. You cried over the extraction like it wasn't divine intervention, like the universe didn't just save your future by subtracting what was suffocating your power. Let's be honest, you weren't growing with them. You were shrinking. You weren't at peace. You were negotiating peace. You weren't being loved. You were being tolerated, controlled, delayed. And every time your intuition said leave, you made excuses. You begged the universe to let them stay. You asked for signs and ignored every single one. So when the energy finally snapped, when the silence got loud, when they ghosted, walked, or exploded their way out of your life, you called it heartbreak. You called it abandonment. You called it betrayal. But the universe called it extraction. And here's the truth. Not everything that walks out is a loss. Some exits are surgical. Some departures are destiny. You were never being punished. You were being positioned. And the very people you were trying to hold on to, they were the ones pulling you off course, draining your light, corrupting your clarity. And you knew it. Deep down, you always knew it. But you fought to keep what the universe was trying to remove. You clung to what was actively unraveling you. You begged for connection while the universe was cutting spiritual cords behind your back. And still, when they left, you questioned your worth like their absence defined your value. It doesn't, because the universe never abandons its chosen. Never. It protects them. It filters their circle with a scalpel, not a sword. It lets the mask fall off in stages so you don't panic. And when you're still too loyal to walk away, it snatches, swift, cold, complete. And you called that abandonment? No. That was a mercy you didn't ask for, but desperately needed. So stop rewriting the narrative like you were the victim. You weren't abandoned. You were chosen. You weren't left. You were lightened. They weren't part of your future, and the universe loved you enough to end it before you destroyed yourself, trying to fix what was always meant to fall apart. From now on, don't mourn what was removed. Thank the universe for extracting what had no business surviving your elevation. And walk. Let's keep going. Number 11. You cried for closure from people who never deserved your openness. You handed them your heart with the truth still bleeding from it, and they gave you gaslight in return, then disappeared like ghosts and left you sobbing over closure when all they ever gave you was confusion. You cried for closure from people who never deserved your openness. You begged for honesty from mouths that only knew how to twist. You pleaded for clarity from minds that built chaos just to watch you unravel. And the worst part? You kept showing up. Kept sending long messages, kept rewriting reality in your head, trying to make sense of something that was never meant to make sense. Because the truth is, it was never about misunderstanding. It was strategic. They confused you on purpose. See, when someone never intended to love you, when their plan was to feed off you, when their game was manipulation wrapped in fake vulnerability, clarity is the last thing they want to give you, because clarity ends control. And as long as you're spinning in circles trying to figure out what went wrong, they win. As long as you're stuck waiting for closure, they stay relevant in your energy. But let's make it plain. They were never going to explain. Not because they're incapable, but because your confusion was their comfort zone. They wanted you lost. They needed you confused. They fed off your spiral. And you tied to with your massive heart, your urge to understand, your commitment to love, kept chasing truth from people who only knew how to run from it. They don't owe you closure, and they never had the capacity to give it anyway, because closure requires honesty, it requires accountability, it requires depth. And those things don't live in people who abandon you without flinching after using your soul like a mirror they couldn't handle. They didn't walk away silently because they were hurt. They vanished because they couldn't face the truth that you never deserved what they did. So stop waiting for the message that's never coming. Stop refreshing the screen like closure is hiding in unread texts. Stop mourning the apology they were never built to give. The silence you're angry at, that's not rejection. That's your recovery. That's your nervous system finally stabilizing. That's your peace crawling back into place. That's the universe saying, let's not invite confusion back in just because the silence gets loud sometimes. You gave them openness they didn't earn. You let them into sacred spaces they were never supposed to visit. You tried to build a home in someone else's emotional rubble, and when it collapsed, you blamed yourself for standing there. But now you know better. You don't need closure. You need distance. You need alignment. You need truth. the kind that lives in your own gut, not in their explanation. Because if they really respected your openness, they never would have left you shattered for sport. You weren't asking too much. You were asking the wrong person. So now that the masks have fallen and the truth is screaming louder than the silence ever did, there's only one thing left to do. Move forward like you were never broken. You weren't abandoned. You were elevated. You weren't destroyed. You were divinely redirected. Let them sit in the chaos they created. You've got healing to finish and legacy to build. If this message hit your spirit, like the video, subscribe, and drop the number 77 in the comments to claim your clarity. Share this with another chosen one, because when the truth spreads, healing multiplies. Let's rise.